and welcome to a podcast series by Leaders Edge called Falling Into It. This is a podcast where young professionals share their stories and thoughts on the insurance industry as they continue to grow their careers. My name is Zach Ewell, and I'm a content producer here at the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers and a contributing writer to Leaders Edge magazine. My guest today is Mara Blagojevich, a 29-year-old senior marine risk consultant at Allianz. Blagojevich attended the United States Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York, where she later served in the United States Coast Guard early on in her career. She shares how serving during Hurricane Harvey became one of the most monumentous challenges of her career, what it was like changing careers and working in insurance, and the most topical risk trends she foresees impacting shipping for the next decade. Give it a listen. Mara, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. So happy to be here, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to jump right into it. I understand you are a senior marine risk consultant at Allianz. Can you tell me what that's like?
Absolutely. So I will say a lot goes into the day-to-day workload, and every day is different as a senior marine risk consultant. My expertise is, used to provide detailed risk evaluations to support not only our underwriting staff, but our clients. And that includes a multitude of different things, whether it's, reviewing claim history, packing and shipping procedures. We coordinate vessel inspections, warehouse storage risks, loading, storage, shipment discharge, terminal and port operations. Like I said, there's a lot that goes into it, and I'd say that that's probably just the tip of the iceberg, because even with that, there's a lot that goes into that workload wise, and every situation is different. It really keeps me on my toes, and as much of an industry expert that I might be, I can easily say that I learn something new almost every day. I have an amazing opportunity to work with a worldwide network of industry experts. And at Allianz, we have a very large global team, almost every region of the world. So, we're routinely working with our global team, especially with all the technological advancements. The industry is ever changing. And part of being a risk consultant includes keeping up with those advancements, in order to be able to provide that best loss control feedback.
So with so much, essentially you have to juggle. You just talked about all these different areas of business and risk. How do you stay organized?
That's such a great question, because I don't know. It's tough. It's a lot of Excel spreadsheets. Keeping track of clients and the workload, checklists. I think I have 40 on my desk.
Wow.
So it's a lot of juggling and organization that I would put on as a requirement if I were writing a job description for this. But it all works out, because once you get kind of in the groove of things, and you have an understanding for what the underwriters need, what the clients need, it kind of just flows. And doing it for a couple of years now, it kind of comes naturally. So day to day, I know what needs to be done. And then it comes with checking your inbox in the morning and all the new things that pop up. But you kind of get into the groove of things, and you just kind of make it work.
And so I guess speaking of that groove, if you will, was it a harsh learning curve to get into that groove when you started your position at Allianz?
I picked up that trait when I was at the academy. We took a ridiculous amount of credits every trimester, and I was forced to, at 18 years old, when I started the academy, to get organized and have that sort of skill. Otherwise, you wouldn't have finished school. So I kind of picked up on that very early on. And then also, with my career in the Coast Guard, I also was forced to stay organized and keep up with training and my workload there. So I think all my experience kind of translated well into the position. So I'm fortunate in the fact that it wasn't a tough learning curve doing doing it previously.
Okay. So in other words, you had the learning curve earlier when you were 18. So I got you ready. Understood. So yeah, jumping into the Coast Guard. So did you always, and for those that listening, you had a career first in the Coast Guard. Did you always want to be in the Coast Guard?
I'll backtrack just a couple years before I joined the Coast Guard. When I was at the Merchant Marine Academy, a part of me kind of wanted to do it all, right? Because we were introduced to so many different things. You could sail commercially as an engineer. You studied logistics. You could serve any branch of the military. Everything the academy had to offer kind of intrigued me. And being 18 to 22 years old while you're there, you're so young, and you have to make that decision on what you want to do upon graduation. And some of those things, like joining the Coast Guard, is permanent, right? For
Sure.
at least a short amount of time. So I ultimately joined the Coast Guard because while I sailed as a cadet, I was on a ship out in Hawaii. I had the opportunity to be a part of the ship's annual inspection that the Coast Guard does, and I really enjoyed shadowing the Coast Guard during that inspection. So during the inspection, their goal was to ensure the safety of life at sea through inspecting the vessel for compliance with all sorts of regulations. And then I ended up doing an internship with the Coast Guard at a vessel inspections unit out on Long Island. And we did all sorts of inspections, from ferry boats to container ships, tugs, barges, fishing vessels. And I enjoyed the internship so much that when I was done with it, I decided that that's what I wanted to do upon graduation. It just kind of felt right. So that's kind of why I joined the Coast Guard.
Interesting. So you were also just generally interested in risk. Yeah. So I guess when was the jumping off point? Because you served you graduated from the academy. You served in the Coast Guard. Can you take me through, I guess, your decision to essentially jump ship and then join the insurance industry? What was that like?
So after serving in the Coast Guard for a few years, I actually had my first child, and my husband was also in the Coast Guard. Um, Both of us being in the Coast Guard meant that we were going to be, every 3 years we were going to be moving and going somewhere new. But we wanted to start our family, and we did. So we decided to both leave active duty and settle down somewhere close to family. I actually stayed a reservist, so I'm still in the Coast Guard. I work, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. Um, and I didn't know anything about the marine insurance industry, but I knew that I wanted to be a risk consultant only because I went to a couple of like career opportunity meetings and stuff that the Coast Guard and the military has to offer when you're getting out. And I learned about risk consulting, and I thought, wow, I could tie what I did in the Coast Guard in the private sector. And I connected with some alumni that were risk consultants actually for marine insurance. And I thought, wow, this is perfect because I could do something still very beneficial in the marine industry, stay close to what I love doing. I enjoyed the regulatory side of things, and I could use my knowledge base in the insurance world. And I will say it's the best decision that I could have made for my career. And working at Allianz has been nothing short of fantastic. I really don't consider what I do work. I just thoroughly enjoy it, and I enjoy the team, and everything about what I do is really interesting.
I mean, it seems like, again, you never get bored too, because the risks and what you learn seems to always be changing. So it seems like you're always hungry to learn more. So that's fantastic. So I did some background on you. You have previously said in the past that Hurricane Harvey was one of the most monumentous challenges you have ever faced, as you acted as a liaison between the Coast Guard and Corpus Christi, Texas, when the hurricane made landfall. Can you tell me about that experience and how it changed your outlook on life?
Yeah. So, being from Chicago, I mean, you're from Chicago, so I think you could relate. I didn't really know much about hurricanes, right? They don't
Yeah,
happen up there. But
sure.
I do remember Katrina, and I remember the devastation that caused, and I saw it in the news as I was young. But that was like the extent of my knowledge. Then I went to the academy, and Hurricane Sandy swept through, the Northeast and had a catastrophic effect there. And I was part of a volunteer group and we were able to go and do the cleanup in East Rockaway, which was just a crazy experience seeing all that devastation. So fast forward, being stationed to Corpus, I took on a couple of courses for hurricane preparedness that, is offered to us. And it just so happened that Harvey hit when I was there. And they evacuated the town, but I was mobilized and I couldn't leave. So I wasn't evacuating. I was staying there and helping. And during that time, I didn't really know what that meant because I didn't know how it felt to be in a hurricane, right? So,
Sure.
people from Florida are going to say, oh, it's just a hurricane. They go through it all the time. But me not ever experiencing that, I was like kind of in a state of shock. I was eager to be there. And it was really a crazy experience. And if I remember correctly, we had about 24 to 48 hours to prepare because the storm formed very quickly. And I was a direct line of communication between multiple response parties, so that nothing would slip through the cracks, right? Because in situations like this, communication is absolutely key. And one of the things that I will never forget, I was where I was mobilized, and I'm standing under an awning with the team that I was working with, and during one of the worst parts of the storm, close to a door just in case. I don't recommend that. But anyway, we're watching the winds and the rain, and the palm trees are just bent in half, and there's cars sliding across the road. There's flooding. There's wind, and I saw palm trees literally flying through the air, like doing 360s. Where they came from and where they went, I have no idea. I'm sure we found them the next day, but these were just things that were so surreal. I've never seen anything like it before. And only to think that, the Houston area got hit much harder than Corpus did in terms of flooding. It was very hard for me to wrap my head around because this was something like out of a movie for me. And I
Sure.
don't know if it necessarily changed like my outlook on life, but I could honestly say that I'm happy I'm not a storm chaser. And also, as a reservist in the Coast Guard, I have the opportunity to be mobilized and do it again. So even though I work full time for Allianz, if the Coast Guard ever gave me orders to go somewhere and do hurricane response, I could go for 30, 60, 90 days, depending on what my orders would be. And I would absolutely do it again because it was so rewarding to know that so many people relied on us to ensure the safety of their community and then the salvage and the cleanup of the aftermath of the storms.
Seems like you were in the middle of it, and it's something that you could be called on again to kind of serve and make a difference in.
And like the aftermath was probably more of an experience for me than actually being there during the hurricane, because we worked with salvage operations, right? So we tugboats sank to the bottom, and we watched the salvage operation of the tugboats being pulled out. There were barges washed up on the shore. It's like they were just picked up out of the water and brought onto the land. So all this stuff we had to work on for months and months after the fact.
So I guess how long were you there for?
I was in Corpus for almost 3 years.
Oh, wow.
But that the cleanup lasted probably 6 to 9 months, I would say. I don't remember, but it was a lengthy period of time because it does take a lot of effort to move those vessels and barges back into the water and make sure that they're seaworthy.
Absolutely. Jumping back into more marine risk, we at Leader's Edge have reported a lot on this topic, from new shipping routes opening in the Arctic Ocean due to climate change, to supply chain disruptions, to shipping container boats that only keep on getting bigger and bigger. What are some of the most important risk trends that will impact marine coverage in the next decade?
So covering a topic like this, I think we could have a conversation for like 2 hours at least. But I will say, in the last decade, there's been hundreds of total losses. Year over year, we've seen a substantial decline. And part of that is the regulations are catching up to the issues that arose, let's say, in the 90s and early 2000s. In the next decade, one of the largest challenges is going to be decarbonization in the shipping industry. And we're not seeing that just in the shipping industry, right? We're seeing that across all industries. And a lot of effort has already been put into this in the shipping industry. From a loss perspective, we haven't seen major claims yet, but with the alternative technologies and the alternative fuels, this is going to set in on a much larger scale over time. New ships being built using these alternative technologies, old ships being modified. We're going to see issues come up in the next decade, and probably even longer than that. And like you said, we have larger vessels continually trending, especially cargo vessels, and those risks grow larger, and it will continue. There's a growing risk of fires and groundings have a very high cost in terms of salvage. We saw that with the Ever Given. That blocked a very critical trade route for almost a week. Now we're talking losses associated with supply chain disruptions, perishable goods, hull and machinery, just to name a few. So these are all things that we're going to see again in the next decade. And like I said, this could even push longer than the decade. And fire risks, they continue to be the main cause of loss across all different types of vessels. And those arise from lithium-ion batteries, which there's a huge push for those in the market. And those pose a very extreme type of fire risk. Then we also have misdeclared cargoes, whether that be containers stored wrong or mispackaging of hazardous cargo. But that misdeclared cargo also plays a big role in container losses, and that's largely due to improper weight balances. So, these growing ships, we're pushing more cargo a lot faster, and these types of things happen. And then finally, I want to touch on something that's near and dear to my heart because I work very closely with it here at Allianz, project cargo. It's a very specialized industry within shipping, and it's becoming a lot more prevalent, especially with cargoes such as like wind turbines, because, and that goes back to the decarbonization, right? Mm-hmm. The industry needs more specialized folks spearheading those types of operations because it is very specialized type of loading and stowing, and there's a lot of moving parts in project cargo. And then there's the urgency to get those infrastructural projects completed. So I think in the next decade, we're going to see an uptick in those types of losses as well. But hopefully, with using the right types of vessels, the right type of port infrastructure, procedures, we'll be able to study those types of losses out in the future. And like I said, working at Allianz, I have the pleasure of being able to work on many of these projects. And I love it because it's fast-paced. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. But as the industry grows, it's only going to become more complicated, and we need to, as a whole, be more cognizant of that.
The insurance industry has had a tough time in the past recruiting younger talent. Why do you think this is, and what would you propose to help fix it?
I'm very happy to answer this question because there is a lack of young talent. And it's very important for us to introduce this industry to the young talent because that young talent is the next generation, right? So we, like I said, I did not know that this existed. This was not, brought to my attention. I didn't know that this type of job was, out there, this career. I have been to a couple of industry events where I've ran into cadets from different maritime academies. And, they pick my brain, just like I did when I was in their shoes. And they're so intrigued with what I do. And they're like, you do what? You do this? And that's so cool. You're able to stay in the maritime industry and have these experiences and work with, a multitude of different types of clients, all within the industry that we are going to school for. And, I've kept in contact with them because it's so important for those relationships to last, because once they're, ready to jump ship, if you will, I would love to bring on that younger talent onto our teams and kind of guide them through these paths, whether they want to be underwriters or risk consultants or claims adjusters, whatever it might be, because we are lacking in that younger generation. And I think an important role to play in this would be to start reaching out to these young professionals in their early career, whether it be, going to career days at different schools or different maritime academies, or introducing the field to them in a different way, whether it be inviting them to different industry events. I think that would be fantastic because, these students, they want to get out of the academy and go do something for a day, So I think there's plenty of opportunity, and I'm really excited to kind of help spearhead that, and I hope I make a difference in that aspect.
Well, that is a fantastic answer. And I mean, it sounds like from your experience, you said earlier, you went into the academy because you wanted to do everything, and it seems like you are doing everything also now, working in insurance.
It's a very well-rounded job, and it's awesome, and I love it. And Allianz, the culture here is fantastic, and my team is just phenomenal. I couldn't be more proud of the things we do.
And it seems like there's a lot of untapped talent within the academy and those who are in service. So I guess this is definitely a great message for those who are trying to fill roles in the industry and looking for untapped talent. It seems like there's a lot to be had here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Mara.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Falling Into It. You can find more episodes and podcasts by Leaders Edge on our SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Till next time, have a good one.